Hello, my name is Peter Raymer, and today we're going to talk about how to override the D365 JumpRef method. So in the last video, we talked about view details and the ability to click on this blue text on a form in D365 to drill into the related form. So I'm on the sales order details form, I'm on this header tab, and on the delivery fast tab, and I can actually click on this blue text or right click and say view details, and this will actually take me to the related form and automatically filter this related form to the value that I just clicked on. This is extremely nice. It allows me to view details about this related record, edit those details, maybe create a new record, all very easily. And so the way we do that is actually through relations, as we talked about in the last lesson. And so if I go to the sales table, which is the underlying table for this, I can expand relations and see that there's a relationship between the delivery mode table and the sales table. And by adding a FormRef property or setting the FormRef property on this related table, I can actually set this up kind of automatically. And that's really great. However, sometimes we need to take it a little bit further. Sometimes it's not possible to add a relation, or the relation would perform in a different way than we want, or we just want this blue text to navigate to a different form in certain scenarios, and we'll talk about those different situations a little later. But in that case, we actually need to override what's called the JumpRef method on this form control to cause it to perform differently than the default system would. So to explain further, let's actually look at an example. I'm going to go back to the lines tab on the sales order details form. I'm going to scroll down to sales lines, and then let me actually look at the delivery tab, and then let's look at this shipping carrier. And so the shipping carrier actually uses a JumpRef, and so let's see how that works. The best way to view that JumpRef method is to figure out what control this is on this form. And this is a really big form, so it can be a little hard to find this control. So the easiest way I've found to find a control in Visual Studio on the back end is to right click on this label, hover over form information, and then you can see it here. So we can see that the name of the control is TMS carrier info underscore carrier code. So we just need to remember that for a second, TMS carrier info. And so if we do that, I can actually go back to the sales table form, and I can right click, open the designer, and then I can actually type the name of that control inside this form right here. So let me search for it a second. I'll type in TMS carrier info underscore carrier code and hit enter. And what this will do is it'll actually filter the design to just show me this control and all of the parent controls after that. It's really fantastic. Then if I expand this node, expand the methods, I can actually see that this JumpRef has been overridden. If there were no methods here, it would mean the JumpRef still exists, but it's going to perform the default way. By it being here, it means some developer came in here, right-clicked on methods, selected override, and said JumpRef to override the JumpRef method. And so we can actually see what that code looks like by just double clicking on that JumpRef method. And that takes us right to the place in the back-end code of sales table to see that code. We could also get to that code by right-clicking on our form and saying view code, but then we'd have to search for it to find where it is in here. But we can see that it's in a class named after the control, and then specifically the method is always going to be named JumpRef here. In this case, it's actually calling JumpRef on the table called TMS carrier, and it's passing in the value that's currently in this field into this method. But that's okay. We can navigate to this method by right-clicking and saying go to definition, or clicking F12 on our keyboard. Now that we're at that method, we can see how this JumpRef works. And really there's two ways of writing a JumpRef method in general. And I have another article about how to call forms through code that you can check out. And essentially this is going to be very similar. Basically, we can call another form by using this menu function class, or we can call the form a little bit more directly. So let's look at both those examples. So in this case, we've got, we're declaring an args class. An args class is just a kind of more of a generic class that can take on properties or the record that we want to pass to our calling form, or a few other things. Most of the time it's used to pass a current record into another form or class. So we're going to instantiate the args. We're going to use the value passed in, the carrier code on that current field, to look up the TMS carrier record. Then we're going to call args.record, passing in this table buffer. We also call args.lookupRecord, passing in that table buffer. And then finally, we call this menu function, or we instantiate this new menu function. We pass it the name of a display menu item. So in this case, there is a display menu item called TMS carrier that we're passing in to this class. I can find that menu item right. Whoops, that's the name of the form. And then this is the menu item that calls that form. And then we call menu item.run, and we pass it this args object, this class. And by setting the record on this args class, the calling form is actually smart enough to see if this table buffer that we're passing in a record matches the data source on the calling form. It will automatically filter that form to just show that record. So if I open this form, look at the data source, I can see that the main data source is called TMS carrier. That's the type of record we're passing into this form, and so the system automatically will filter just to that record instead of showing all those TMS carriers. That's extremely powerful. So this is really a JumpRef method. We're really just calling another form and passing it the information we need to in the simplest and most common of scenarios. There's another scenario where we want to call a JumpRef method directly, and so let me see if I can bring that up for us, or I'm sorry, call a form directly. So if I actually go back to our sales table form code, and let's see, look up a few examples here, I can go to this carrier code. That's the one we just looked at. And then if I go to another example, let's see here, this is going to be an overridden JumpRef method on the return item number field. And if I right click and say go to definition, this is going to take me to this method. And I can actually see another example of an overridden JumpRef. This JumpRef still implements args, and it sets the record to a passed-in object, but it's a little different in this case. It's calling args.menuItemType and setting it to a display menu item type, and then it gives it the menu item that it wants to call. And then it uses this FormRun object and FormRun class to pass in the args. And then it calls FormRun.init, which is initializes the form, runs the form, and then really detaches the form from the initial form. So this is just, I know it's a little confusing here, but this is another way that we can call a form through code. And really the important thing is we're passing our record from our initial form to the calling form that allows it to filter. Now, in both of these examples, we're really not doing anything differently than maybe the base functionality would do. And so let's look at a few other examples where the code in this JumpRef might be a little bit more complex and might give you a reason of why we would override the JumpRef. And just to give you a few examples, one reason why we might override the JumpRef is maybe it's not possible to add a relation on this table, or the relation we did would mess other things up. In that case, we can override the JumpRef and still have this same functionality without the relationship. Other times, we actually maybe don't want to call a related form. So let's look at an example there. I'm going to open the retail parameters form, so you can find it by typing retail parameters in your application explorer, right-clicking on the form here, and then saying view code. And then if you go to this line of code, you can see that they've actually overridden the JumpRef on this particular field. And that's because there is, in this case, it's looking at retail modern POS installer. In this case, this field doesn't have a related form. And so we wouldn't want the system to, or a user to be able to click on the blue text and go to some related form that doesn't exist. It would give an error saying unable to view details, no form exists. So instead, we've specifically overridden this JumpRef and commented out the call to super to make sure that the user can't get to that form. Just to view another example, if we go to the MCR royalty table and we look at this line of code for royalty code, the base Microsoft code removes the call to super, making it so that the user, if they click on the blue text, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to navigate them away. So let's look at a couple quick other examples. If we look at sales table again, right here, and we go to line, let's see, 5744 in the base product, I can see that this VAT number has an overridden jump reference, and in this case they conditionally go to another form. So if this VAT number table functionality is turned on, if it's enabled, then allow them to navigate to the related form in a different way. Otherwise, just call the standard super functionality that may take it to a different form. So that's just another example. Let's look at a couple more. So if I go to line 7873 on sales table has a lot of these examples. Here's a scenario as well. So if you are you're on the item ID field and you are trying to navigate and click on that blue text, if that item is actually a kit item, the system doesn't want you to be able to drill into that other form. So they're just going to call return and don't do anything. Otherwise, if it's not a kit item, yes, go ahead and click on that blue text. It'll take you to the product details form. So there's just a lot of really good examples here. I think I have one more, broker details. If I look at this on line 540, here's another example of calling a menu item. So basically, you can determine for yourself if the base functionality of clicking on that blue text doesn't work and if you need to modify it. So before I finish out, let me look at one other example of how you might override the JumpRef on your own custom form. So in this case, I have a form called RSM vehicle. If I open it up, I have some design. It's just a simple grid. And let's say I want to override this make ID column. I can expand the methods I can then right click on the method, select override, and then you're going to see an option for JumpRef. Let's see if I find it here. There it is, JumpRef. And when you do that, it's going to add code to your code behind class for that form, and then you can add your own code to call another form, whether you call a menu item and that's opening the other form, or you're using the FormRun class to open that other form. Both of those will work. So that's what I've got for this lesson here. In the next lesson, I'll explain how you can override the JumpRef method on a base Microsoft form, because on base Microsoft forms, we're not allowed to add more code to this code behind class directly. We have to use either chain of command or an event handler and register that method to do that. And so that's a little bit longer to explain, so I'll put that in the next article and video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you watching. If you liked the video, click the like button. I also invite you to push the subscribe button as well. If there's other topics you would like to see a video on, please post in the comments and I'll see what I can do. I hope you learned something new today. Thank you.